I still train my kids not to answer when they hear me call them. This hell started 9 years ago, the end of the month. I had gotten married, pregnant, and my husband deployed in a span of 4 months. We lived on base in an older house because low rank is equal to shit houses sometimes. My older kids, not shared, went to my aunt's when I put in bed rest. So at this point, it's me, two cats, and a dog. Two-story, really old townhouse. I started hearing weird sounds, but I choked it up to the neighbors who were always really loud and the fact that I wasn't used to the house. When I was about 5 months pregnant, they moved and no one else moved in. I had a friend who had her baby when I was 6 months along, and her husband was deployed with mine, so naturally we bonded together. It was her first child, and I just wanted to support her the best I could. Now, when you are on bed rest and have no one to help you, you still have to do a lot. One night she had come over and I was rocking her son so she could just sit and relax. We both heard someone talking downstairs. I had the windows open, so we just thought, oh, it's a neighbor or someone walking their dog. Fast forward, I was 35 weeks pregnant and developed an illness that requires me to have an induction at 37 weeks to try and save my baby. He's fine now, he's 8. Now this matters because our husbands came home 3 weeks later. My husband had been home not even a week. He was in bed adjusting to the time change, so I got the baby and went downstairs to get breakfast going and get myself together for the day. The way our downstairs was set up makes this even weirder. You came in our front door and immediately slightly to the left was the stairs and the wall next to them was my kitchen wall. There was a doorway right at the bottom of the stairs into the kitchen and another door on the other side of the kitchen into the living room. Now from that door about 5 feet to the right was the hallway that went to the other side of the stairs where the laundry room was. I saw my husband stick his head around that door from that hallway. I asked him if he needed something and when I looked back up, he was gone. Didn't think much of it at the time. Carried on about my morning. He came down about an hour later and I said, "What did you want earlier when you came down?" Now I know he wasn't lying because he laughs when he's messing with me and I call him on it. I was like, that's weird, but maybe I'm just tired. We moved to a second house on the same base, much nicer and a little bigger. He was out in the field and it was just me and the kids. My older kids had been in bed for about an hour and I was getting stuff done downstairs and getting the baby ready for bed. I saw then my 6-year-old come down the stairs and watched him go into the kitchen. I figured he needed water, so I went back to what I was doing. I didn't hear or see him go back up, but I just assumed. Now this is where I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I heard my child call my name but in a voice that wasn't his. This of course freaked me out. I grabbed the baby and ran up the stairs. Both of my older boys are sawing logs. This tells me that my 6-year-old definitely wasn't down in the kitchen, not 5 minutes prior. I didn't know what it was then. I just knew that something wasn't right on that base in general, but now I know something had been following me. Then calling my name went on for months until we moved to a new base in a different state. Nothing at all happened there other than weird little ghost jokes, I call them. Stuff being moved and such little non-threatening things. 2 years later, we moved to Campbell, KY, and as soon as my husband deployed, it was right back and worse than ever. I told my kids, if you think I called you, no, I didn't. I will come to you if I need you or I'll send your sibling. I had to program myself to not just answer when I heard someone say mama, and by this time I have 4 kids. It happened almost weekly until he came home and it tapered off again. Until my friend finally had it happen to him. It's never really gone away and it just doesn't interact for months to years now. We have been where we are now, no base, just a normal neighborhood. It's here too. I heard it 2 days ago when I was the only one home. Calling my name, my dog lost his shit and stood at the base of the stairs growling. Sometimes I think I'm crazy and maybe I am. But it's been with me for damn near 9 years. it just goes into hibernation at times. I, 24F, have had paranormal experiences my whole life. It died down the older I got, but never really went away. It's been a few years since I have experienced anything, but today I had a weird experience that was very new and different. I'm not even sure if it's paranormal or not, but it was very odd and gave me a weird feeling. I am currently at my desk, which is in the living room. Strange, I know. And my husband came home from a walk and we were having a conversation. And then when the conversation ended, he said, I'm going to go to shower now. And I said, okay, go ahead. And he walked back toward the room. About 30 minutes passed and I asked where he was. I was wanting to know if he was still in the bedroom or if he was out here so we could hang out while I work, and if he was okay. He messaged me and said, we are at the pool? Instantly I am confused because what does he mean he's at the pool? He just took a shower. So I messaged him back and said, weren't you just in the shower? And he said, no, I am at the pool with our roommate's name. What's going on? I asked if he was messing with me and he swore he had no idea what I was talking about. He claims he never said he was going to take a shower. My husband likes to mess around with me, but he doesn't play it out for longer than maybe 2 seconds. I told him I watched him walk toward our room, which also happens to be the way to get to our garage, and he said he left out the garage door. But I never heard our security system say that a door has been opened, and trust me, that thing does not miss a beat. He made a joke about me bleeping into a different dimension, and I joked back that I got stuck halfway through. I'm really confused and wondering if anyone else has experienced this before. Also, I'm sure most of you are going to be like, you just forgot or you misheard. But believe me, I'm not the kind of person to jump onto the paranormal for everything. But I've always been smart to trust my feelings, and that entire incident made me feel very strange in the pit of my stomach. It might also help to mention that for the last week or so, I have felt really off in our room. I have never experienced anything here until recently. I can only assume what myself and my mom encountered was a doppelganger. Before I start, my dad used to work at night. Anyways, when I was around 6 or 7, I lived in a townhouse with my mom and dad up until my mom passed away less than a couple months later, and she was pouring me some milk in the kitchen like every other night, and I was winding down for school the next day. There was nothing scary about this night, and I was just waiting for my mom to pour milk and looking out in our living room in front of me, looking at things and just waiting there. However, on one of my head swivels from looking around, my dad had appeared in front of a closet door in our living room. It didn't scare me at first, since I just assumed it was my dad, but looking back, there was no noise ever made. Our doors and floors creaked, and with how quiet it was, we would have heard anyone moving around. However, what was so scary about it was my dad was just standing there and staring at us from across the room. It wasn't scary at first, since I still was under the impression this was my dad, but the longer he kept standing there and staring at me, the scarier it got. He didn't move an inch, didn't blink, and the longer I kept looking at him, I noticed his eyes were too small. They were wide open, but small enough to where it looked wrong. I remember I started to blink and rub my eyes because I thought maybe I was seeing things, but it just kept standing there for a good minute longer until after a blink it just disappeared. No noise again at all. There was no way, considering it disappeared in a blink, for it to have humanly moved that fast without making some kind of noise. The only way it could have disappeared as fast as it did was if it slammed the door shut behind it. I remember how terrified I was at that point and looking to my mom to see if she saw it too. But when she didn't say anything, and so I assumed I just hallucinated it for years. That was until a few years ago I was telling my dad about that night, and he told me my mom had also seen it, but due to her mental health problems and me not saying anything to her or him about it, he dismissed it as hallucination, nothing quite like that has ever happened to me again. But that experience was the reason for years I couldn't sleep without a light on. Before that day, I was not afraid of the dark. I didn't believe in ghosts, didn't even understand people could actually die at that point, and was not really exposed to religion and not recently either. Every night after that incident until we moved, I was petrified to even sleep in my own room. When I was a kid, we had a lot of odd happenings at my grandmother's house. It was a very old house located next to a cemetery. A few people had died in the house before my grandmother lived there, and to this day, I still have creepy dreams about that house. On this afternoon, my grandfather was working. My adult uncle, who lived with my grandmother at the time, was also gone with friends. It was me, my grandmother, and my younger sister alone at the house with a couple of pets. I was probably about 7 years old and my sister was 5. My grandmother loved to tell us ghost stories. We were sitting in her living room, my sister and grandmother on the couch, and myself on the love seat with the dog. The cats were outside as it was summer, and they loved to stay out during the day. So all living beings in the home were accounted for. As we were listening to my grandmother, I hear what sounds like a muffled dog barking coming from downstairs. The house was a multi-level, where there were a set of stairs that went down to the landing and a front door and then another set of stairs from there to the second living room, my uncle's room and the laundry room. Neither my grandmother, sister or the dog heard the sounds. Right after I hear slow footsteps coming up the stairs. I tell my grandmother, and her and my sister listen and hear the footsteps also. We are all sitting there looking at each other in silence when the TV turns on by itself. The remote was sitting on the stand next to my grandmother and nobody was touching it. The TV turns off, then back on again, and then turns off and stays off. We were all really scared at this point. So my grandmother said we would go down the hallway into her room and lock the door and watch TV in there until my grandfather got home from work. We followed her down the hall, terrified because we had to walk by the stairs. We went into her room and laid down and watched TV, and at one point I fell asleep. I woke up to knocks on my grandmother's bedroom door and heard my uncle say, "Mom, I'm home," which we found unusual because my uncle had a very loud truck that none of us heard pull into the driveway. I got up and opened the bedroom door and there was nobody there. I slammed the door shut and ran to the window to look in the driveway. His truck was not there. So whatever this was trying to scare us and impersonated my uncle for whatever reason. She lived there for about 15 years after that, and while other weird shit happened, nobody else was ever mimicked or heard a mimic to my knowledge. I grew up in the country, very far away from neighbors. It was the type of place that had one gravel road which transitioned into a dirt road leading to it. It was about a 30 to 45-minute drive to get to school every morning, and I was going 60 miles per hour basically the whole way. My father and I lived alone. My siblings had either gone to college or no longer lived there, so we had this fairly big house on about cleared 4 acres and then were surrounded on all sides by trees. When I tell this story, I try to really impress this. We were far away from anyone and anything, like 3 hours from a real city. The forest wasn't for a lot or two. It was about 1500 acres of unkept forest that had some cows that would poke through now and then. There was no nearby campsite, highway, homeless encampment, nothing at all like any of that. We also had a standalone garage with a bathroom and kitchenette that I liked to spend time in. My nearest neighbor was a good couple miles down the road. Anyway, my father worked 48-hour shifts as a FF/paramedic, so I'd be home alone during those times. I used to love it. What teenage boy wouldn't? I would spend time in the garage because it had a radio, fridge, microwave, table, couch, even AC and a bathroom. I liked it because it felt like it was mine, almost like an apartment. but the whole place ultimately grew to creep me out. Something changed and weird things started happening there. One day, I was hanging out in the garage and went to use the bathroom. It was a Sunday and my father was on his way home from work. I was sitting on the toilet when I heard the telltale sound of the garageman door opening, not the big overhead door. My dad's cowboy boots walking across the concrete, very distinct sound for those who knows, and it came right up to the door I was sitting behind. Then my dad's voice asked, "You in there?" I said, "Yes, just going to the bathroom. I'll be out soon." He said, "No problem, just checking." And then cowboy boots walked away and the door closed. Now when I say I was certain I just spoke to my father, I mean it. There was no TV playing, no radio going, and no city or street noise that I could have thought of. It was clear and loud. So I wash up and go out to say hello, except nobody was home. Not only was nobody home, there were no tire tracks in our crushed limestone driveway, and that thing has extremely fine dust that preserves footprints and tire tracks extremely well. Our gate was also closed and nothing was out of order. Our hunting dogs was just lazily keeping to themselves as well, when they would normally be baying up and down over either happiness to see my dad or protecting us from a stranger. My father came home later that day and I kept this to myself. I had another encounter with this thing about a month later, but it was far more negative and scary, and by then I think it knew I didn't believe that it was my dad. It used his voice again, but was angry and threw a wrench off our garage shelf onto the floor. When I tell this story to folks, they usually say, "Are you sure it wasn't an intruder?" Let me ask you this. Have you ever spoken to a dear loved one in a plain one-to-one conversation? You would never mistake their voice, right? My dad raised me as a single parent and had a very unique voice due to having survived throat cancer. I have never met another man who sounded even close to him. I had no confusion or second thoughts about having spoken to him. I legitimately thought it was a mental illness, but I have never dealt with it ever again, and it's been decades now. It stopped when we moved out of the house. This used to happen in my ex-boyfriend's father's house. We rented it from his father for several years. If I was in the bedroom and he was elsewhere in the house, or the other way around, he would hear me calling him or I would hear him calling me. So we would stop whatever we were doing at the time and go ask, "What is? Why are you calling for me?" Only it was never us calling our names. The doorknobs would also rattle sometimes if, for example, the bedroom door was closed and we were in bed, no one else in the house. The doorknob would turn back and forth really quickly, like someone was trying to open a locked door. But when we would creep to the door, no matter how sneakily we got out of bed and walked to the door, when we swung it open, nothing was ever there. My boyfriend has walked right up to the door while the doorknob was still being jiggled and grabbed it and opened the door in one quick motion, and still nothing there. Sometimes the blinds in the windows would shake violently. Then the last thing that happened before we had a friend of ours do a cleansing on the house, I was asleep in bed and the blinds were doing the shaking thing according to then my boyfriend. He said when he went to lay down in bed with me and pulled back the covers, there was a handprint on my upper arm bicep area. He said you could see the imprint of the fingers and thumb and palm grasped around my arm like an invisible hand was holding onto my arm. He woke me up freaking out. My arm where he saw the handprint was ice cold feeling to me and to the touch. We called our friend a few minutes later because she was into Wiccan type things and she came over with salts and sage sticks to smudge the house. But nothing ever happened again after she did whatever she did. My ex actually moved back into that house a couple of years ago and still lives there today, and still no more weird activities since that night and cleansing. My father-in-law has Parkinson's. I don't know if his sickness is somehow tied to this thing. And when he lived with us, I would always see a spirit that looked like him walk from his bedroom into the kitchen. I first started noticing when we lived in our first apartment together. You could see his bedroom door from our bed, and I would often see this thing walk from his room towards the kitchen. Fast forward, and the husband and I bought our home. One night, my husband's on the deck grilling, and I hear loud footsteps coming down the stairs. Turned to see this entity that looked exactly like his father come off the stairs, walk across the hallway into the kitchen, go over to the dishwasher, and bend over like he was putting something in it. Then it disappeared. I got so worried. I thought my father-in-law passed away upstairs, so ran to check on him. He was in the bathroom taking a shower. Weird, but maybe I'm crazy. So I came back downstairs and sit to talk again with my husband. Moments later, I hear the footsteps again, but this time my husband is looking at me, so the stairs are in his view. I turn to look out at the corner of my eye, and same thing. This entity comes off the stairs, across the hallway into, over to the dishwasher, bends down like he's putting something in it, and then poof, disappears. My husband's jaw is on the floor, and we both have chills. We run up to check on his father, totally freaked, and now his dad's coming out of the bathroom freshly showered. This thing mimicked my husband a couple times when I was alone, but since his dad has moved out, I have never seen it again. I wish I understood, but have no explanation. I have sat on this story for years, mostly because talking about it feels wrong in a very primal way somehow. It started around 2021, I think, when my mom and I went to New Orleans for a vacation. I'm totally willing to accept it didn't have to come from there, but the whole city just felt wrong, and everything started right after. My mom has always been interested in the paranormal, so she took me along to a bunch of attractions like that, voodoo shops and such. The one place we went to that stands out to me the most was the Museum of Death. I got violently ill in there, like throwing up ill. The entire room was spinning. To anyone who hasn't been there, the first half of the museum is pretty cool and informative, revolving around death. Near the back though, it turns into more of a serial killer museum, which I didn't know about before we went. Afterwards, on the way back, I could not shake the feeling that something else was around me. It felt physical. You know that feeling when someone is just about to touch you, when your skin can sense their presence but not the actual touch yet? It was like that. The rest of the trip was riddled with misfortune. Our hotel door kept opening while we were trying to sleep. I lost a goddamn amount of my favorite art supplies. We lost our credit cards only for them to reappear after the trip. We even ran into a three-way homicide scene on our way back to our city, not pass by it. We were at the scene immediately after it had happened, at another hotel, completely by accident. My mom swore something had hitched a ride with us, as she put it. I don't believe in the paranormal the same way she does. I don't think ghosts are real in the way a lot of people imagine, but I'm sure weird things can and do happen sometimes. The whole way back, she was talking to this thing. She named it and said it could ride with us on the way back as long as it left before we got home. So we finally get back to our city and settle in for the night. I stay up late playing video games or something, and around 3 am, I get up to use the bathroom. For context, my bedroom opens straight into a hallway facing directly to the living room, where my mom was sleeping on a fold-out couch. To my right, immediately next to my room, is the bathroom. It's dark because it's 3 am, with only my TV casting light from my room, the bathroom light, and the moon coming in through the windows above my mom's bed. Before I turn toward the bathroom, I notice she's staring at the fireplace from the couch. She is hunched over, her hair is insane, but I can still tell it's her by her clothes. I yell to her a few times until she turns her head towards me, but she doesn't move. Right after, the bathroom door to my right opens, and my mom is standing there saying something like, What do you need? I'm in here. I look back and the figure on the couch is gone. Cue me freaking out and trying to explain to her what just happened. Ever since then, my mom shows up sometimes calling for me, knocking on my door. At first, it was easy to explain it away as a mental health thing until other people started witnessing it. There have been times when I have been chatting with friends, either online or in person, and we hear my mom when she is not there. An old friend of mine never liked my door to be open when we video called. She said she could see something that almost looked like my mother but not quite, moving outside my hall. The weirdest it got, other than the first occurrence, was when we had to move. It was a two-story house, and my mom would call for me at the bottom of the stairs all night, even waking my actual mom sometimes, although she didn't remember exactly why she had woken up, just that she heard a weird noise at the same time. It never called me by my name though. It usually just said Buggy, the nickname my mom uses for me. I guess that makes sense since my mother doesn't really call me by my real name much. We have since moved again and nothing has happened yet. It's been about 2 years now. Two incidents followed that one. My brother and two of my friends saw me in separate events, but it wasn't me. Nothing for years. My kids and their friend followed something that looked like me, but again it wasn't me. My boyfriend says he's heard me talking to him when I wasn't there. I heard my daughter's distinctive cough when she wasn't home. At 16, I was helping a friend paint her mom's rental. I was in the living room and needed something, so I called my friend's name. When I turned around, I saw her go into the bedroom behind the plastic protective sheets. I followed her in there. Talking to her as I passed through the plastic, I got a glimpse of her walking into the bathroom in the far left corner of the room. As I rounded the area and could now see the bathroom, I realized there's no one there. I called my friend's name again. She had been outside all along. Not long after that first incident, two more followed in quick succession. I walked into my living room and my much older brother, he's 40 and I'm 18, so not a brotherly prank, was giving me a weird look. He told me that I had walked past him through my kitchen, living room and into a bedroom. He was talking to me and I just wouldn't answer. Then I walked out of my room from the opposite direction of bedroom he saw me walk into. Not long after, I was having a party, had gone to the store and was back at my house outside smoking. Two of my friends came out to the front yard and asked if I had come in the house at all since coming back from the store. I said no, I was outside. They said they saw me walk into the house, past them. They were trying to talk to me, but I didn't talk back, just walked past them to my room. They followed me, but I wasn't in my room because I wasn't in the house. Then nothing for years, from 18 to 30. 30-year-old me has two kids, 4 and 7 at the time, and they have a friend, 6. I am in the garage working out with the 6-year-old's mom. My kids were in the playhouse phase, so I would frequently hear mom, only to be told it wasn't me they were calling. So I hear them all playing and I hear mom, hey mom, mom, and I tell my friend I don't know whether to go in or wait. They know we are in the garage. No one comes out. I think, okay, they were playing. A few minutes later, the door opens and my older daughter comes out and says, wow, mom, how would you do that? Are you magic? She tells me that they were playing and wanted a drink. When she came out of the room, I was walking across the living room. Her and the other two followed me into a bedroom, but I wasn't there. She said, I called your name, but you didn't answer, and then I saw you go into the room, but now you are out here. How did you do that? I told her I had been outside the whole time, and she just looked at me so confused and said, but mommy, it had your hair. Nothing happened again for a while till this year. I work nights and my partner works days. I got a text at 4 a.m. one morning asking if I had been talking to my partner over our security cameras. I hadn't. He told me that he had fallen asleep on the couch and woke up to me saying, "Hey, come to bed." I said no, I wasn't on camera, but maybe he was sleeping still. He said he thought that too till I said it again more angrily. It wasn't me though. I am now 35 and yesterday I heard my younger daughter's very distinctive cough coming from her room, but she wasn't here. It's never anything malicious, but it's one of the very few unexplainable things I have in my life. Let me adjust my tinfoil hat for a second. My theory is that it's a haunting based on alternate reality versions of myself and others, almost as if another timeline is getting merged with now. But that's so far out there. I just can't figure out what it is. Has anyone ever had similar experiences or have some logical explanation for those events? This takes place back in 2012 when I was about 16 and my sister was about 6. My mom, stepdad, sister, and I lived in this 1960s mid-mod house. According to our neighbors, our house and the house next door were trap houses years before we moved in, and we saw shadow people in the house regularly. Our dog wouldn't go in certain rooms/areas, and in these particular spots, I would see a really tall, hunched over shadow person at least every other day. One night I was home alone with the dog. My mom and stepdad were out at a party and wouldn't be home until wee hours, and my sister was spending the night at our grandma's. She wouldn't be coming home at all for any reason. When I was in the living room with the dog watching TV, clear as day I heard the front door swing open and what sounded like my sister shouting my name, "We are home." Then complete silence. No footsteps, no door shutting. I was willing to think it was my imagination until my dog stood up and growled in the direction of the front door. And she was a sweet, gentle black lab who hardly barked or growled at anything. I sat there and held her saying the Lord's Prayer over and over until I felt brave enough to go check the front door. I knew in my head that nobody was there, and it had been a few minutes. It was a small house, and if my grandma and sister were really there, they would have come to the living room where I was immediately. I told my mom about this the next day when my sister wasn't around, and apparently a few weeks before something similar happened, but it was the sound of the door opening and closing. They thought it was my stepdad, but it was nobody. I still haven't told my sister to this day, but maybe I will soon because she is almost 17 and harder to frighten these days. I wonder why they are imitating a little girl and why a spirit would repeatedly try to get us to come to the front door.